Hi, I'm John Blackburn, and this is Entertainment Matters. This is a podcast for people who make live entertainment happen. I talk with people from across entertainment and beyond to explore how we think about our work and how we put that thinking into practice. In this notes episode, I'm going to be talking about value and worth, and this is going to be heavily inspired or provoked by my conversation with Charlie Umney. Now, Charlie talks about an area of work that he spent a lot of time thinking on, which he calls the politics of value, which, without retreading the whole conversation, who decides what is worth paying for and how do people decide what is worth paying for and how much to pay for it? And I'm going to contrast the very detailed way that he spoke about that with some of the sort of received wisdom that we often throw around in entertainment, which sounds something like this: know your worth, charge what you're worth, and value yourself. Now, obviously, all three of those sentences are pointing in a very positive direction that I agree with and endorse. I'm going to come back to and reference those phrases a little bit later on. But to kick us off, exploring this in more detail, I want you to imagine a guitarist friend of yours. And this guitarist friend of yours, let's call them Frank, did the last Beyonce world tour on guitar, okay? They've got all the personal attributes which make them perfect for that tour. They've got all the professionalism. They've got all the technical, musical, organizational skills required to do that job really well. In fact, they absolutely smashed it, okay? Now, when Frank gets home from the Beyonce tour, Frank might go and do a pub duo gig with a singer-songwriter friend of theirs, okay? Do they get paid the same for a gig down at the Dog and Duck that they got paid for a night on the Beyonce tour? Of course they don't. Why would they? And yet, it's the same Frank. Surely they're worth the same as a person and as a performer. Their professional worth, actually their professional value hasn't decreased, has it? It's still got all the same skills, all the same stuff. Of course, we know that a different context, Beyonce to Dog and Duck, gives us different economics. It's a different audience. It's a different market. And of course, that results in different pay or different commercial value. But importantly, not different worth. The little caveat here is, of course, I appreciate that doing a pub duo gig and touring with Beyonce on guitar are not the same job. However, we all know people that have done really high level jobs and then have come back and done a local gig. So I'm going to use this episode to draw a distinction between two things. Worth is something that a person has. Value is something that an activity has. So worth you could think of as being intrinsic worth. It's your worth as a person, dignity, self-esteem, personal value, okay? Commercial value, which is what Charlie is really talking about, that's what something you do is worth to a particular market. It's contextual, it's variable, it's negotiated, it's comparative. It's the real Charlie territory when he's talking about politics of value. What is something that is worth paying for? Who decides that on what basis? The fact that that value is shaped through audiences and platforms and intermediaries, it's shaped through systems and expectations and indeed the market. Now, for clarity, I am not anti sentiments like valuing yourself or charging what you're worth. I think they're very valuable. These phrases are, of course, they're a shorthand, they're a metaphor. They are emotionally true, but perhaps technically imprecise. I think the reason that it's useful to separate worth and value is that it can help us to perceive the environment we're in more clearly. It can help us to understand what I've referred to previously as the real game. Now, a classic version of this scenario would be to talk about a glass of water. When you turn the tap on at home and you pull out the glass of water, I mean, technically it does cost you something, but you don't think, oh, that's 79 pence worth of water. You don't think about it like that. If you go to a restaurant and ask for tap water, you don't expect necessarily to pay anything for that tap water. If you go to a restaurant and you buy a sort of branded bottled water, you expect to pay a certain amount. If you go to Tesco and buy possibly even the same branded water, but at Tesco, you expect to pay a different amount. If you were crawling your way through the desert and someone came and offered you a liter of tap water, you would pay all of the money that you had for that liter of tap water. You would pay a lot more than you'd pay for it from the water bill. You'd pay a lot more for it than in the restaurant, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So value is contextual. So one thing that you can do if you want to increase your commercial value, or rather the commercial value of something you do, is you can take what you already do and put it in an environment where it is valued more highly. In my language, that means just get better gigs. So if you're a performer, a sound engineer, a musician, a singer, a dancer, a stage manager, you can take the same thing. If you put it in a different context, it will have different value. So be in the right market, the right environment for what you do. Now, the other thing that I talked about was this real game thinking, understanding the environment you're in, maybe in more detail. Commercial value often depends on understanding a bit about what matters to who and why. So a practitioner, like a performer, can ask, what does the producer that's paying me actually value? What is actually important to them? And the producer can ask, what does the audience really value? It's about asking questions, thinking about and understanding needs, incentives, priorities, and my favorite word, values. If you do that, you can make yourself more commercially valuable. So some examples of understanding the environment you're in a little better. You might think as a performer, for example, that hitting like some of the big notes in the show harder and more cleanly, more beautifully, or I don't know, adding more glittering props to a stage, or just working harder is the highest value activity. Whereas the market, whether that's an audience or a producer, might value reliability, responsiveness, a particular way of communicating more highly. One of my favorite examples of this, which I learned about when I was a kid, when I was still at college, was I heard a story about a particular drummer who had gone out and gone to a stylist and said, what are the modern sort of styles in kind of pop music and, commercial music at the moment? And then bought a load of outfits and had a load of haircuts with a stylist basically, and had a bunch of photos taken in these different looks, because it turned out he'd identified that actually a particular aesthetic, a particular look was actually more valuable to a particular marketplace than how fast his double stroke roll was. So yeah, understanding what really creates value in that environment, understanding the real game, is probably your fastest route to figuring out how to do something that creates more value and be paid in line with that. So to wrap this up, you've got to kind of hold two ideas in your head at once. First of all, you have worth, you are valuable, and also the things that you do have value. And secondly, markets decide commercial value contextually. So separate your identity where you can from pricing. Be where what you do matters. Be in the best environment you can, or help create that environment. And then take responsibility for the most valuable contribution that you can make in that environment, in line with your goals, your values, your version of success, and the environment's values. If you're feeling undervalued, or perhaps that you're not being paid what you're worth, in inverted commas, take heart. Your worth and the commercial value of what you do are not the same thing. You may need a different environment, you may need different clients, or you may need a deeper understanding of what the people around you actually value. Your worth doesn't need to increase, and the commercial value of what you do can. Thanks for listening, and thanks for whatever you do to make live entertainment happen. If you'd like to be notified when there's a new episode and stay up to date with the podcast, you can sign up for the Entertainment Matters Cue Sheet at the link in the description. Have a great show.